Joan Crawford once said that love is like a fire, but whether it's going to warm your hearth or burn down your house, you can never tell. And honestly, I think that's pretty spot on. Our story begins at the ending of another one. It was the first weekend in October, and it was our traditional final camping trip weekend. Another tradition we always upheld would be roasting marshmallows at the campfire, drinking juice together, and telling spooky stories late into the night. There was something about the chilly autumn evenings, s'mores, and the smell of campfire that just felt perfect. Jordan just finished his version of the nervous subject, and it was my turn next. I decided to tell a classic one from my childhood, The Honeymoon of Horror. This was always a fan favorite in my family, and it was absolutely the best story my mom would tell us. Like all of her better stories, this one was based on a real-life detective case she actually dealt with. You see, my mom was a great detective. She was fantastic at what she did. As a matter of fact, she's the real reason why I always dreamt about growing up and becoming a detective. My mom was so obsessed with her job that it bled into every facet of her life. She worked long hours, pretty much only talked about her cases, and I wouldn't be shocked to find out if they were all she dreamt about too. Had to tell a scary story? Well, she had just the case to tell you about. The thing about her stories was the fact that you knew they were based in reality, and I think that's what elevated them. Somehow, there was always a connection, no matter what. Her work plagued my life as much as it did hers. The first time I heard about the Honeymoon of Horrors at the Von Haunt estate, it was during a camping trip similar to this one. She would always begin this story by explaining she got a phone call about a missing couple case. It was out of character for these newlyweds to not contact their families. The couple was supposed to be honeymooning in Windenburg at the Von Haunt estate, so naturally, the estate was the first place my mom wanted to check out. When she got to the manor, she decided to walk around the estate before checking in with the staff. Behind the mansion was the historic Von Haunt hedge maze. It was designed by the late Lord and Lady. The maze was created to be a lasting monument to their enduring love. She also found out that the chess pavilion is a popular place for wedding receptions and club gatherings. Anywho, after walking the grounds for some time, she decided it was time to check into the estate. As soon as she walked in, she could feel this weird tension. Everything felt sort of hectic. The front desk greeted her as she approached by saying, "Welcome to the historic Von Haunt estate. From the hedge maze to the lovingly restored mansion, there's something for all the family to explore. Please note, management accepts no responsibility for any so-called paranormal encounters you may experience on site. We're also sad to inform you that we no longer offer overnight stays." Everything felt odd. My mom explained to them who she was and why she was there, which prompted the employee to call their manager. Once the manager came down, they decided to sit in the upstairs sitting room. The manager began to say that, "Please note, the bedrooms are no longer available for overnight stays. Since the regrettable incident, our insurance firm has instructed us that no living person should sleep in the Von Haunt estate." Honestly, I don't want to drag this story out too long because it really goes nowhere. I wish I could tell you that my mom, the fantastic detective, got her answer, that she figured out what happened to that couple during their honeymoon of horror, but I would be lying. It's creepy to imagine a B&B covered up something horrific. I think that's the scariest part of the story, that it was never solved. Either way, this is not where the story ends. Even though this is where my mom's story ends, this is not where the story ends. Ever since the first time my mom told me that story, I was hooked. I desperately wanted to know what happened during the couple's honeymoon. How did the estate not know what happened to their only overnight guests? It's not like they have multiple rooms, they only have the one. What were they hiding? Why did they always bring up the fact the estate wasn't haunted? I had to know. However, I wasn't planning to make the trip out to Windenburg just for my own curiosity. So it seemed like the stars were aligning when Morgan Fyres came into my office. She wanted me to prove to her sister Siobhan that the ghosts at the Von Haunt estate were real. Apparently, Morgan was at a party at the estate when she saw a ghost. She claims that she had a bit of juice before wandering off into the maze. She looked up at the balcony area above the maze when she saw him. It looked like there was a gentleman painting up there, but the dude was dead. She ran towards the exit of the maze but ended up lost. A long time passed before she found the exit, and when she jogged up to the balcony, the ghost was nowhere to be seen. Morgan explained that she ended up revisiting the estate a few times, trying to get a glimpse of the ghost. Finally, she gave up. It wasn't going to happen. Nonetheless, she still continued going to the events at the estate. Then one night during another party, Morgan convinced her sister to wander through the maze with her, in hopes of spotting the ghost. After an hour or so, Siobhan wanted to go back to the party. She had to pee, like real bad. Once more, Morgan was alone in the maze, until she stumbled upon a woman tending to the garden. It wasn't any ordinary woman, she was a ghost. Morgan ran up towards her, but all of a sudden, the ghost turned her head, spotted Morgan, and vanished. Once Morgan reunited with her sister, she excitedly told her about this new ghost. Despite her sister's excitement, Siobhan did not believe her. She refused to even listen to the details and exclaimed how convenient it was that the ghost showed up after she had left. No matter what Morgan said, Siobhan was not believing Morgan's story. In fact, this argument started to affect other areas of their relationship, and it started to blossom into a full-out sibling rivalry. Morgan had had enough. She wanted her sister and her sister's gangle of popular friends to believe in her and to stop mocking her. Morgan declared that hiring a freelance detective was her last resort. I thanked her for her time and let her know I would get to work on it. I started with an internet search. It's a well-known estate, a popular place in fact. There had to be other Sims that have spotted the ghosts. I was particularly interested in the maze. There had to be a reason that Morgan only saw the ghosts around that. The estate's website had a page about the history of the mansion and its grounds. According to that, the maze overlook was designed so that servants could see and shout out directions to lost guests. Once this became Lord Bernard's favorite painting spot, maze attendance dropped dramatically. Go figure. I don't think I would like some lord watching over me as I try to make my way through the maze. There is also a blurb about the estate on the City of Windenburg's website. It stated that Windenburg's prized Von Haunt estate is a historic and enchanted garden property that's been upkept as a famous museum and tourist attraction. Its most notable landmark is the enormous and perfectly pruned hedge maze, where Sims can get lost for hours. Oh, and don't be surprised if you run into the former lord and lady who used to inhabit the location before its new owners took over. Even after 100 years of being deceased, they're still around to entertain and terrify their guests. I'm not sure why Siobhan didn't believe Morgan when she said she ran into the former lord and lady of the estate, if even the city acknowledges their ghostly presence. I feel like there must be something else going on with these two, like more than just an argument about the existence of ghosts. Anywho, armed with the knowledge that there are probably ghosts at the estate, I packed my things and left for Windenburg. As soon as I arrived, I couldn't get over how beautiful the manor looked. They did a fabulous job at maintaining the property. I entered the manor and realized something. When my mother arrived here, so many years ago, things would have looked so different. At that point, they had just stopped letting guests book overnight stays here, and they were more or less set up to be a private bed and breakfast. Nowadays, the manor looked like your average museum. I wandered into the sitting room on the main floor. There was a velvet rope preventing me from getting close to any important artifacts. The most impressive objects in the room were definitely the giant paintings of the former lady and lord of the estate. They were hung beside the fireplace, making the room look quite grand. Each painting came with a bit of information about the past owners. For Lord Bernard Escargot Shallot IV, it stated that he lived from 1864 to 1898. Which means he was only 34 when he died. It said that he was born rich enough to be thought eccentric rather than crazy. Lord Bernard's artistic temper sadly outweighed his artistic talent. Forced to wed for money, his marriage to Lady Mimsy eventually grew into a passionate affair that inspired many enthusiastic, if technically lacking, paintings. For her portrait, it proclaimed that Lady Mimsy Elkhorn Shallot lived from 1872 to 1898, making her only 26 when she passed. It continued by saying that she was known throughout Windenburg as the Green Lady, or the Ghostly Gardener. Lady Mimsy Shallot is said to have haunted neglected gardens. Whilst she died before producing an heir, Lady Shallot's large dowry is credited with saving the Von Haunt estate from financial ruin during the Currywurst crash of 1892. Interesting. Well, now I know a bit more about these two in case I do run into them and need to make some small talk. Honestly, there were three things that stood out to me. The fact that Bernard sounded like he was a bit crazy, the fact that they had to bring up a lack of an heir, and the fact that something called a Currywurst crash happened in 1892. Honestly, I never heard of such an event happening in any of my history classes. I decided that I would take a walk around the manor and the surrounding estate, but this wasn't going to be the day I really set up camp here. It was more so for scoping out the security, or lack of security. The two places I wanted to see in particular were the gardens and the maze overlook. As I got to the maze overlook, I was overcome by how stunning the hedge maze really was. It truly was perfectly pruned. I noticed that there was still an easel set up with a half-finished painting. I found this interesting since this was Bernard's favorite place to paint when he was alive. If he wasn't around anymore, why did this setup still exist? Was it for a tourist? Why did a tourist leave a half-finished painting here? It was a little sus. I walked down the path towards Mimsy's garden. I honestly couldn't get over how pretty this area was. It was a gardener's dream come true. I especially loved the ponds nearby. There was a little sign near the other entrance of the garden that said, "Local legend holds that Lady Mimsy Shallot still tends her prize garden, noted for its luscious lemons." They're really playing into this ghost thing. It seriously makes me wonder why anyone would doubt the existence of these ghosts. After checking out the rest of the estate, I noticed that this place had absolutely no security. No staff, no cameras, nothing. It was positively bonkers. Now it was time to go to a nearby pub and talk to the locals. Thankfully, there was a pub pretty close to the Von Haunt estate, like across the street essentially. I got inside and went straight to the bar, ready to talk to some locals. I started a conversation with the person sitting next to me. I asked them a few questions about Windenburg. Apparently, Windenburg has a sister city called Windermere. The name Windenburg has a deeper meaning. Winden means either wind or morning glory. The Berg is the German word for castle, which makes sense since there are remnants of an old castle on the crumbling isle, and in a few other places throughout Windenburg. Another person interrupted our conversation to explain how Windenburg is a part of Old Country, and it's mentioned here and there throughout the city. I took the opportunity to ask them about the 1892 Currywurst crash. They both laughed and explained that during that year it became very popular to eat sausages for all of the meals of the day. It was a crazy trend that led to severe devastation and caused a ton of people to go broke, specifically the Shallot family. A group of Sims in a popular club entered the pub at that moment, and everything got a little loud and everyone was a little distracted. So I decided to call it a night. The next day, I got to the estate bright and early. I immediately walked over to the maze overlook. The painting from the day before was now gone. I waited there for a while before I saw him. No, not him. Lord Bernard Shallot was walking my way in all his ghostly glory. Since this wasn't my first time seeing a ghost, I wasn't really scared or impressed. Although it was going to be my first time interacting with one. He didn't even look at me as he finally made his way to the overlook. Instead, he promptly started painting. Honestly, it was a bit intimidating. I gathered my courage and approached. At first, he wasn't too interested in talking to me. but I think he started warming up to me and the conversation became much more natural. He told me about his dreams about becoming a great artist and how he wanted to be someone that Sims talked about for years. He was a tradesman, but his heart yearned for more, despite the fact that he was a hard worker and he was good at what he did. He explained that his dreams got ruined because his father invested poorly in oil and lost the family fortune. He talked about his wedding day and how his father pulled him aside and whispered that what he was about to do was going to save their family from ruination. It was at that moment that Bernard vowed he would never become as pathetic as his father. That didn't really sound like Bernard married Mimsy for love, so I asked about her and whether or not he truly loved her. He replied with, "Did I love Mimsy? As much as any ordinary man may love any ordinary woman, I suppose." He continued to talk about her by saying, "Mimsy was always going on and on about having a child, but the time was never right. We did order a wireless to be installed, though, and that seemed to hold her attention." Honestly, I was too embarrassed to ask him what a wireless was, nor did I have the time to ask him. He disappeared without even saying goodbye. How rude. I took that moment to quickly search up what a wireless was. Next, I went inside, where I quickly recognized that the cabinet in the dining room was being possessed. I waited to see which ghost I was going to speak to next. Finally, after what felt like hours, the ghost stopped possessing the cabinet. It was Mimsy! I was certainly less anxious to talk to her after talking to her unnerving husband. She was also much more friendly, yet she seemed sadder than him. I opened the conversation up by asking her about her experience with their wireless. She declared that she was incredibly excited that day, and it was as if the whole world was suddenly opened up to her. We chatted about that for a while. I even took a selfie with her. Who knew ghosts could be that fun? Then I asked her about their marriage. Her happy expression quickly disappeared as she replied that, "I will admit that our marriage had its bumps. But does not every marriage? Does not the heart take time to find room for new love?" I didn't really know what to tell her. This was a much deeper and more personal conversation than I kind of anticipated. However, she seemed to want to talk more about their marriage. She continued by saying, "It may not be ladylike to admit, but I don't know that I would have chosen Bernard as my companion without my mother's guiding hand. I did so enjoy the grand balls of my parents before I was made a wife." We discussed married life a bit more before she stopped talking and seemed to be looking past me. She said bitterly, "I couldn't wait to have a child of our own. Imagine our little prince running around, plucking on the piano, pulling weeds with me. It would have been a dream." Even though Bernard told me earlier that Mimsy wanted a child, it was harder to hear it from Mimsy herself. It broke my heart picturing her dreaming about teaching a child how to garden, play an instrument, or go to grand balls together. Then her sad expression turned darker before she whispered, "Bernard always slept closer to the fireplace. Due to his cold-blooded nature," he used to joke. It wasn't even until I was on the landing that I realized he wasn't with me. And with that, she disappeared. I didn't notice her beforehand, but someone else had entered the room during that conversation. Strangely enough, this sim looked a lot like my mom if my mom was a bit older. The woman clearly heard the entire conversation and seemed to know Mimsy personally. She talked and talked and talked my ear off about the Lord and Lady. The best thing she told me was, the late Lord Shallot was a troubled artist who would often burn his paintings. It said he accidentally started the deadly blaze of 1898 by hurling an oversized watercolor into the fireplace. Some claim that they can still smell the smoke from the inferno, but the management can assure you that the restoration has completely replaced all materials in this room, and any lingering, haunting stench is pure imagination. I know, I'm sorry. My story is long. It's a non-traditional, spooky story. I thought you guys might enjoy it because, ghosts and, my missing mother and the Lord and Lady's sad, tragic ending, all of that stuff. Maybe it wasn't the right story to tell you this evening, and for that I apologize. I'll get to the end real quick here. I ended up going to the Fyres household. I showed them my selfie with Mimsy and the low-key pics I took of Bernard. I sort of explained to them that Bernard married Mimsy because he was painting not so good paintings and needed money. It started off as a loveless marriage, but eventually grew into a passionate love affair. Siobhan seemed surprised that her sister was right. As for me, I got paid and finally was able to go home. Windenburg honestly looks exactly like those commercials. You know the ones I'm talking about, the dancing and singing ones that you should come visit Windenburg. And honestly, you should. Go check out Windenburg. It's really cool. At the end of the day, I feel like this case brought me closer to my mom. This was probably the last case she came home from. After this, she was sent off to investigate the weird things happening to the townspeople in Strangerville. There's something magical about retracing her steps and being able to go somewhere where she worked. Somehow, it makes me feel like a better detective.